Hi everyone and welcome to the Unquendor Guitars workshop. My name is Daniel and this is the second part of a two-part video in the video series where I'm building my Phoenix Rising guitar, a Gibson Firebird inspired guitar build. In the previous episode we worked on this neck and we focused mainly on doing the headstock veneer, tuner holes, truss rod access and all that good stuff. And in this video I'm going to show you how I do my fretwork. So without further ado, let's dive straight into this video. Yeah guys, I'm back and the Headstock logo is in. It took me 2 live streams to do so. One where I cut all the aluminium letters and another one yesterday night where I did the actual inlay. So if you have a couple of hours time and you want to see the entire process of me doing this inlay, I can highly recommend checking out those 2 live streams, and I'll make sure to put a link to the first one up here somewhere and of course I'll leave a link in the video description as well. If you're interested, I can highly recommend going through those live streams where I did the inlay. We had a lot of fun with chat and a lot of fun doing the inlay. So next step is of course finally putting some frets in this fretboard, but first I have to make sure it's nice and level, so I'm going to do that first. Then I'm going to clean up all the fret slots one more time, and then we're going to do some frets, and for me it will be the first time to do frets with a bound fretboard. So but before we can start putting in frets, we have to make sure our fretboard is nice and level, and to do so of course I'm going to first check it with a straight edge. And I can see I have to adjust the truss rod a tiny bit. Just to have a tiny bit of tension on the truss rod. And now to make absolutely sure the fretboard is nice and flat, I'm going to use a white pencil, cross hatch my fretboard, and take a leveling beam with some 220 and 320 grit sandpaper, and without applying much pressure I'm going to just run it across the fretboard, and I'm going to keep my leveling beam parallel with the center line of the fretboard, and I'm going to sand the fretboard until all the pencil marks are gone. And it's important not to focus on a particular spot. Try to keep your strokes even. Pencil marks will stay at the lower spot, so that spot requires the least amount of sanding. So, without much pressure, and when I'm done with the 220 grit, I mark the entire fretboard again and do the same thing again with a higher grit, in my case 320 grit. So for first 240, follow-up step 320, and then we're going to switch to even higher grit sandpaper to really polish the fretboard. So the pencil marks for the 240 grit pass are all gone now. So I'm going to clean the fretboard. Use a white pencil again. Crosshatch the fretboard once more. And then use a 320 pass. And you can already see the pencil marks disappearing. And I'm only using the weight of the leveling beam. The only bit of attention I have to pay is where that big aluminium inlay is, because I can feel it sanding away at a different rate as the rest of the fretboard. So that for me is a point of attention. So, and after the 320 grit pass, we can start to polish the fretboard. And I'm going to use some wet and dry sandpaper, but I'm going to use it, of course, dry. And I'm going to start with 400 grit, if I can find it. Let's take out a new sheet. And I'm going to use a sanding block. And I always have several of these blocks on the bench in different sizes, different shapes. Usually they're offcuts from one project or the other. But what they all have in common is that they have a flat surface. And that's important. Make also sure it's a hard sanding block, so no soft backing, because that will unintentionally round over edges. Something I don't want. Again, white pencil. Up until 600 grit, I'm always checking my progress, guys. Always use cross-hatching to check what I'm doing. And I think up until 600, 800 grit, that's a good thing to do. And after that, you're removing so little material, and that is not really necessary. But now with 400 grit, I can make shorter passes. Of course, also because my sanding block is shorter. And I make passes until I see the pencil mark disappear. And then I move over. And with this fine grit sandpaper, make sure you clean it regularly. And of course, if you're not shooting videos, make sure you wear a mask or have air filtration running or something. So let's see, all the pencil marks have disappeared, and I'm going to do a couple of long strokes. And after I'm finished with 400 grit, like I said, I'm going to use 600 grit, 800 grit, 1000, 1200, 1500, all the way up to 2000 to really polish the fretboard. .800 grit. So, and some 1000 grit sandpaper. And now the tricky part is to keep the orange stripes clean. So while my sandpaper is relatively clean and new, I'm going to first clean up the orange binding. All right. So guys, for the last pass I'm going to use 2000 grit sandpaper and a soft backed sanding block, so I can really polish the fretboard to its final shine without applying any oil, any finish to the fretboard yet. And I'm using a soft backed sanding block in this case because I'm barely removing any material. I don't have to worry that I'm affecting the straightness and the flatness of the fretboard, but the soft back sanding block really helps me to put some force on the sanding block and polish out the scratches made by the 1500 grit sandpaper, if any, to be honest. But yeah, and I think we're there for now, and I think you can see the reflection of the pencil in the fretboard. So let's clean up all the fret slots and then finally start fretting the fretboard. So the fretboard is nicely polished, and the next step before I'm going to clean the fret slots is I'm going to create a tiny little bevel on every fret slot. So I have this curved little triangular file, and I can run it over the edge of the fret slot, but because the file is curved I can avoid hitting the binding. Yeah, and I'm taking extra good care near the inlay to make sure I create a nice bevel on the aluminium. And sometimes even use a diamond file. Because I want to make absolutely sure there's no burr on the edge of the aluminium and that the fret should go in nice and smooth. I forgot one. Maybe even 2. So, with all the fret slots beveled, it's time to clean them and to remove any type of debris and dust that might be still in the fret slots. And to do so, I'm going to use a modified feeler gauge. It's a 0.4mm feeler gauge that I roughened up with a file on one edge, so it now has a serrated edge, so to say. And of course, I'm going to use a knife or a scalpel to help me remove the dust that's in the outermost portion of the fret slots. And guys, this is a bit of a tedious job, to be honest, but it's one of those jobs that's very important and well worth investing your time in or taking your time for to do. And that's because if you're pressing in your frets and there's some debris in one of the slots, it can give you a lot of trouble. You have to maybe pull the fret, or it's not seated properly, so when you try to level it, it keeps rising. So all kinds of troubles can arise from not cleaning your fret slot properly. Usually with a non-bound fretboard, it's easy. You just take your cleaner and or your fret saw and run it through every slot once or twice, until you don't see any debris coming from the slot again anymore. But now with this bound fretboard, it's a bit more tricky because most of the debris has gathered in the outermost section of the fret slot. So yeah, this will take me some time. So I'm going to, I think, do most of this off camera. You now know what I'm doing, hopefully. And yeah, like I said, it's one of those jobs that needs to be done. Yeah, let me first clean out all the ends. After cleaning up all the fret slots, I went ahead and set up my fretting tools, and I cut a couple of lengths of fret wire from a big spool I have, and I'm going to use a Dunlop 6105 equivalent fret wire. I can't recall the brand. It's a European brand, but I can't remember, but it's a narrow but high fret, so it's narrow jumbo, a medium jumbo fret. It's a fret wire I always use on my guitars. I really like it, and currently it has a radius of approximately 14mm as it comes from the big spool, and for my neck I'm going to require a 12-inch radius. So a couple of years ago I made this little radiusing jig, just 6 bearings and some nuts and bolts. Very easy to make yourself, or you can buy one from any number of luthier supply shop. But when I made this, I thought it was a bit expensive. And I'm going to check the radius with my radius gauge. And I want the fret wire to be a tight under 12 inches. And it makes it a bit easier to hammer the frets in or use the arbor press to get them in. instead of them being the exact radius. So maybe something about around 11, maybe. Still not there yet, but I'm going to pass the others through first. So that's one. And with this one still in, I'm tidying the radius a bit. Yeah, I think I'm there. Huh? Let's do the last one. Oh, this is exactly 12. So one more pass. Come on. Yeah. I think I'm going to give them one more pass just to be sure. Here we go. Let's put this aside again. We no longer need it. And they're now just under 12 inches. So that's perfect. And what I like to do is nip off all the ends, so the first 1.5 centimeters, because with radiusing, the first section stays flat, so there's no radius on it. So I'm going to quickly remove those sections. One. And two. So and now I don't know what the best way forward is, because I've never done a bound fretboard before. I know I'm going to need a fret tang nipper to remove a tiny bit of the end of the tang. And let's see, I might end up not using the press. I think it might be easier to just hammer them in, because I want to be very precise with the fret tang length. So let's support the neck. I'm going to start right here at the 24th fret. And let's see. First remove a tiny bit of the tang. Nope, the other way around, I think. Yeah. Alright, this removes a tiny bit of the tang. And I've seen videos where everyone said there's a tiny bit remaining, which it does, on the back of the fret tang. And I'm going to use a diamond plate right here. Yeah. Yeah, it's just a sharpening stone, a fine sharpening stone. And yeah, I think I can now measure the length. Something like so. Cut the fret to length. And now let's see how much of the thing how to measure this. Maybe like so. It's trial and error for me too, guys. Now I need to remove a bit more. Okay. Remove the burr. Maybe use a file. Okay. Okay, haha. The first fret is in, and just because I can, I'm going to press it in a bit more, but I don't think that was really needed. Now I can snip off the edges or the ends. Yeah. And I always like to make sure the frets is seated properly. Yeah, I think it is. Maybe tiny tap right here. Yeah, first fret is in. So yeah guys, I did one more and I'm having a bit of trouble with staying focused on making the video. I keep getting distracted and I'm not sure how to capture this on camera so it's nice, entertaining, educational and not too boring. And yeah, for some reason I keep getting distracted by things I'm thinking about and I forget to press record, or I'm standing here for minutes at end thinking about something, adjusting something that's not suitable for the video, for example. So I'm going to do another one and maybe I'll put this in a time lapse or something, or I'll be back with you after I've done a couple. We'll see. Remove a bit of the tang. And let's see. So just a couple more to go, guys, and I think I finally have the method down, and that's always funny when doing something, that as soon as you get the hang of it, you're usually almost done. But hey. It's taken a bit longer than I anticipated and that I hoped for, but I must say I'm very pleased with how the frets are in. And you might have noticed I'm not using any glue, because I don't like using glue that much, and on a regular fretboard I sometimes wick in glue from the sides, but it's just more to fill up the tiny gap for the tang of the fret. And I think when you have good fret slots, you don't need any glue at all. If your frets are seated properly, you don't need glue. So let's go. And I know, for anyone wondering why I'm doing one fret at a time, it's just my method. I know it's not the most efficient way of doing things, but this is just my method. One fret at a time, and always double press. And that's because I'm always afraid that when cutting the sides of the fret, you compress the fret end just a tiny bit, and it might just be enough to pop it out of the fret slot just a bit. So that's why you always see me double press the frets, just to make sure that the fret ends are seated properly. From there. Yep. 2 tons of pressure. So if your neck survives the arbor press, you know you have a good neck. It's ridiculous when you think about it. 2 metric tons of pressure on a fret. I can't believe how some people do this on their pillar drill. Maybe you can get the frets in, but it's not good for the drive column of your drill. It's not meant to take that amount of force or any excessive amount of force. Last fret, guys, and then we can start working on the sides. Get the fret position markers in the side. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I'm counting the little barbs. 1, 2, 3. Oh. Now, here we go. There's one. Last one, here we go. And guys, all the frets are in, and as far as I can see right now, there are not much obvious gaps between the fret wire and the fretboard, but I'm going to inspect it more close, and as soon as I'm done I'm going to clean up the bench, and then I'll be back with you guys when it's time to trim these nasty sharp fret ends flush with the fretboard and install some fret position markers on the side. So yeah, let me first clean up a bit. So guys, after double checking the seating of the frets, I thought let's take out the fret rocker and really check how the frets are doing, so to say. And I was a bit amazed, to be honest. I'm going to shut up a bit so you can hear the fret rocker. Tiny spot right there. Nothing. 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 Tiny spot right there. Maybe here. Not really. Very tiny spot right there. It's just a tiny spot. No. Yeah, I think there are factory guitars or guitars that come from a factory with worse frets. And that's it. They're almost all level, just a couple of spots, and I think I could get away with just spot leveling those spots and recrown it a bit, polish it and be done with the frets. But of course I'm going to create a fall off for the last 7 frets, so frets 17 to 24 are going to have a slightly fall off. So you create some more room for the string to oscillate with very low tuning, very low action and playing in the higher position. So it gives a bit more relief for the string. And yeah, and then of course I'm going to do a full level, although I now know I need to level it only this much and then do a recrown and of course create nice fret ends and such. But so first let's address these sharp pointy bits at the side here. Let's see, something like so. Fret end dressing file. And just run it over the ends of the frets. Oh, there's a nasty bit sticking out right there. I'm going to address with a regular file real quick. It was a bit too much. Did I take that on the wrong one? So something like this, and of course they're still sharp. And the other side, I think I'm first going to address some of these higher frets with a regular file, and I'm going to file from the fretboard out so I don't accidentally push out the frets. So, and now I can use the regular fret end file. And if you don't have a fret end dressing file or a fret end file, you can also, of course, use a leveling beam with some sandpaper. I like to use both because the fret end file removes a lot of the material without being too coarse for the wood. And then of course I'm going to clean up with a leveling beam. And later on I'm going to also use my leveling beam to bevel the fret ends ever so slightly. But for now I'm just looking for a cleanup. Like so. Next step, side dots. So a couple of weeks ago during a live stream I made my own orange side markers. And now I can finally put them into the side of the fretboard, but I'm not sure where I want to put them. Am I going to put them straight in the center? Or should I put them in line with the other position dot? But for some reason I think that would look weird. I think I'm going to put them in the center. Yeah, especially here it would be, these are in the center anyway. No, I'm going to do them in line. I'm going to do them in line. To make it even more complicated. Alright, I can't recall. I think it was 8. Yeah, 8 millimeters from the center of the fret. So I have to make a mark. So I can see the center of the fret. 8 millimeters right there. And then 2.5 millimeters. This is the center. Yeah. That's one. Nine, 10, 11, 12. And now I'm going to center them. And let's do them 8 millimeters apart. Yeah, looks great, I think. It often looks best if you use reoccurring dimensions. Again, the human eye spots patterns very well, and when you use, for example, the 8 millimeter over and over again, it will look correct. And if you start using, for example, 10 millimeters or 7, it will look off. Us humans are very good at spotting that. And 2. So let's try and drill 2 holes to start with right here. And I'm using a little hand drill. Oh. With a brand new 2 millimeter drill bit. You can see how easy that goes. Now hopefully these homemade side dots fit. This side does. Yeah, very tight. So a tiny bit of super glue. And hopefully the drop will... let's do them both. Maybe not, maybe not. Let's do one first. This doesn't fit. Yeah, this fits. Snap it. And then tap it in. So let's do the next one. Tiny bit drop. Here we go. It fits. Snap it. And tap them in. So clamp the neck back to the bench so we can do the others. So, yeah, this one fits. Haha! That's do all of them. So guys, and the last one, and I have to hurry because I literally have 60 seconds left of memory in the camera. So, drop a super glue. And here we go. Maybe got a few seconds left. So I can cut the excess. So guys, a couple of seconds left. But here are the side dots. Lovely. I honestly only had 2 seconds left of memory on the cards that are in my camera while I was recording the last clip, and it was the end of the day, so I really wanted to shoot everything, go back into the office, take the footage from the camera to the computer and be done for the day. So luckily we managed. And now that the side dots are in, we can focus on the frets. And first of all, I'm going to start off by beveling the fret ends. And an often used angle is about 25-30 degrees to bevel the fret ends. I'm going to keep them a bit straighter. I think I'm going for a approximately 10 degrees bevel on the fret ends, and of course I'm going to use my leveling beams, preferably 240 to 320 grit sandpaper. But if it takes me too long, I can go to 180 grit if necessary. But usually 220 or 240 is just fine. And I'm going to hold my leveling beam at an angle. And I keep sanding away the fret ends until I'm starting to see some ebony dust on my sandpaper. And that's when I know I'm hitting the edges of the fretboard and that my bevel is reaching all the way to the fretboard. Now with the frets beveled, we can still feel the tiny corners, the outer edges of the frets still being sharp. So before I'm going to do anything else, I'm going to address those first. Using a small fret end dressing file. And usually these files have a rounded side, a polished rounded side and a flat side. And with the flat side of the file, I'm going to really quick knock off these very sharp corners at the very tip of the frets. And this already makes a huge difference. So here we go, all frets done, and the next thing I need to do is make sure that the neck is dead straight. So Allen key, notched straight edge. And yeah, I need to raise too much. Yeah, something like this. And next step, masking the fretboard. And to mask the fretboard, pretty straightforward, of course. Just get some masking tape and start prepping the fretboard. So now with the fretboard masked, I can start leveling the frets, and we've already seen it shouldn't take much. So first I'm going to take a Sharpie or a permanent marker and mark all the tops of the frets, and this allows me to see the high and the low spots when I'm leveling the frets. Of course, on the highest frets the permanent marker will be removed first, and on the lowest spots you see the marker the longest. So nice black frets, and off camera I renewed these sanding paper on my leveling beams, so a new sheet of 240 and 320 grit sandpaper. And now with the frets marked, I'm going to very lightly pass my leveling beam over the frets. And just using the weight of my leveling beam. So, and I keep making these light passes until I can see a tiny metal line appear on top of each fret. So the marker is removed and I can only see the slightest amount of metal shining through. Of course, I don't want to remove all the marker. That would be way too much. It's enough to see just the tiniest line on each of the frets. And of course you can check your work with a fret rocker. And this also helps you to identify if there's a loose fret, because it will show up as being leveled because it's pressed down by the leveling beam, but as soon as you use the rocker, you can identify if one of the fret ends has lifted from the fretboard. So then I'm only going to check up to about the 12th fret, because now that I know that the first 12 frets are absolutely level, I'm going to create a fall off on the last 7 frets. So, and to create that fall off or fall away or whatever you like to call it, a tiny slant on the last 7 frets, I'm first going to put some masking tape on the 12th fret. Two layers of this and one other layer. This is a bit sturdier masking tape. And I'm going to cover half of my sanding beam, the 240 side, to begin with. And this is to protect the masking tape I just applied on the 12th fret. I'm going to write the taped off section of the sanding beam on the 12th fret, like so. And this creates a tiny angle from 12 to the 24th fret. And of course, to check my progress, I'm going to again use some marker. Starting at 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Here we go. I think I will mark these two as well. So. And now with these last frets marked, I can identify my progress, of course. I'm going to sand this fall away until I reach the 17th fret. So as soon as I see the first lines appear on the 17th fret, I know I'm there. And just make small motions and let the masking tape be on the 12th fret. Otherwise you will sand through the masking tape and ruin the leveling job if you don't take care. So something like this. So after creating the fall away on the last 7 frets, it's time for the fun part, for the creative part of fretwork, I think, and also a crucial part. It's recrowning and dressing the ends. And to recrown the frets, I'm once again going to cover the frets in permanent marker. So they're once again nice and black. Yep. And after marking the frets once more, it's time to take out a recrowning file. I'm using mostly a triangular file from which the angles are ground and polished so they don't damage the fretboard. Or you can use any variety of specialized recrowning tools. I sometimes like these, sometimes I don't. It depends. What I do use them for usually is rounding over my fret ends. So it will be a combination of the both. I'm going to remove my glasses so I can see better. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to run my triangular file, and I'll use this fret as an example, along the fret on each side, and with each pass I'm going to rotate the file inwards ever so slightly. And like with an eraser, I'm looking to erase a tiny part of that black line with each 1 or 2 strokes. And I'm going to repeat it until there's only a tiny black mark left at the top of the fret, and this tells me that the fret is now round again. So the flat spot on top has been removed and it's nicely rounded over. And with the bare minimum amount of leveling we did, I should be done in just a few passes. And I think I'm already there. So this is going to be nice and quick. So in the last one, guys. all the frets reground, it's time to dress the ends, and therefore I'm going to use again my fret end dressing file, and this time I'm going to use the rounded side, run it across the frets and over. So I'm going to create a spherical fret end. You can get away with just rounding over the edges, but I like to take it a step further and really round over the entire fret end. So something like this, and yeah, it will take a while to do all 24 frets, all two sides, so 48 times in total. So, with all the fret ends dressed, I'm now going to remove the masking tape, and unfortunately I have to retape it in just a moment, but when all the masking tape is removed, I'm going to use some 400 grit sandpaper and a soft back sanding block, and I'm really going to finish the roundover of those frets, and at the same time I'm also going to create a roundover on the edge of the fretboard. And by running a 400 grit sandpaper along the edge and fret like this, of course, this gives a very smooth feel across the edge of the fretboard. No sharp spots on the frets anymore, but this also gives me a worn in but still new edge on the edge of the fretboard. It's not sharp anymore and it's not too worn, but it's now nice and comfortable. And of course I'll do a follow-up with some 600 grit sandpaper. So after the 600 grit pass, the edge of the neck and the fretboard is real comfortable right now, so I can finally start polishing these frets. And to do so I have to remask the fretboard. And to help me remove the masking tape, I previously forgot to do this, but to help me remove the masking tape, I'm going to stick down a small strip or a narrow strip of masking tape on the edge on each side of the fretboard, and later on this helps me to remove all the masking tape, hopefully in one go, instead of having to peel each individual section off one at a time. So just a skirt of masking tape, and then just like I did before, mask off the entire fretboard. And to start off the polishing process of the frets, I have a variety of different grits of sandpaper, starting with 400 grit, 600, 800, 1000, 1200, all the way up to 2000 grit. And what I like to do is I'm going to start with 400, of course, and I like to make a little roll out of the sandpaper and just go over the frets like this on this side and on the other. And because it's a round object, of course a roll, I can very carefully sand out the scratches left by leveling and crowning and polishing, but I'm very careful not to hit the topmost section of the fret, so the tiny black line that's still barely visible on top of the fret, I'm going to leave that alone, because all the frets are still perfectly level. And as soon as I'm going to go across the frets, like some YouTube videos you see or Instagram shorts, you name it, you see people just leveling, crowning the frets, and then use sandpaper to remove all the scratches going over all the frets, and of course that means you're going to ruin your level job. So I'm always very careful not to hit the tiny black line on top of the frets until I'm at about 1200, 1500 grit. Those grits don't remove much material, they only remove some leftover scratches. So yeah, I'm always very careful not to hit the tiny black line on top. So the thing I'm aiming for with this stage is going up the grits, first with 400 and 600, remove all the scratches left by the tools of leveling and crowning and fret end dressing, of course, and then go up the grits to remove all the scratches left by the previous grit sandpaper. And as you can imagine, this might take a while, so I'm going to put on some music for myself and get in the zone of polishing these frets. So it's not that difficult, it's just a matter of removing all the scratches and keeping that thin black line on top of the frets. And one other tip, and another reason why I make this little roll, after each fret I'm going to slightly unroll the sandpaper, so I have a fresh section of sandpaper for each fret. Yeah, I have to take off my glasses and do all 24 frets a dozen times or so. So the last stage, the 2000 grit pass, is done, and now all the frets are already nice and shiny, but there's one final step I like to do to these frets before I call it a day, and that's of course use my Dremel and a bit of polishing compound, and this is the fine compound, not yet ultra fine, because I'm going to do an ultra fine pass once the guitar is ready, and just before the strings go on I'm going to give it one last polish with ultra fine compound to give those frets a real high shine and a very hard wearing finish. So yeah, I'm going to load up some compound, lower the speed a bit to about 15,000, somewhere around that neighborhood, and I'm going to polish these frets. So, the last two polished frets. Here we go, guys. Some lovely polished frets. And of course now I can finally remove all the masking tape, and I think they might look even better. So let's start pulling back the tape. Oh, too bad. No, not really in one go. So, one fretboard done. Yeah, guys, it's insane. I really wish you were here and could witness this guitar neck for yourself, how it looks, how it feels, and I'm very, 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 very happy and a bit proud of myself of this result. It feels great, it looks great. The subtle details in the wood of the fretboard, the orange striping, and of course I'm pretty proud of the fretwork as well. So yeah, hopefully you guys have a chance one day to witness this guitar yourself, maybe in an upcoming guitar show, who knows. But yeah, unfortunately this is it for this week's episode. This is all I have time for. I had hoped I could get around to getting the heel of the neck to the correct thickness and fit it in the body for the first time. but unfortunately for you guys, but fortunate for me, I'm off on my vacation. But don't worry, I have a lot of content lined up for you guys, so you don't have to miss out on anything. So if this is the first time you visiting my channel and you like what you see, make sure you are subscribed to my channel so you get notified when I upload something new or when I decide to launch a live stream. But that's also something I started doing recently. Impromptu live streams, they might pop up. Unquendor goes live in an hour, or Unquendor just went live. So make sure you are subscribed to my channel and you have that little notification bell turned on. If you liked this video, of course, let me know by leaving a like, leaving a comment, suggestion or a question in the comment section down below. This really helps YouTube to promote my content to other possible viewers, and in the long run will help me to grow my channel. And I really hope that I'm able to keep doing this in the future with you guys' support. That said, if you like to support me more directly, you can do so by getting yourself a nice t-shirt, a hoodie or a coffee mug from the Unquendor Goodie store underneath this video, or via the link in the video description. So yeah, thank you guys, I really appreciate all your support. So yeah, that's it. I hope to see you in the next video or live stream, but until then, take care and bye bye.